We will come back to the story out of Staten Island and the tragic death of Mr. Garner here. In fact, we'll have a law enforcement expert to talk about what is proper police protocol and if what we saw on video was not that. That'll be coming up shortly. But now I want to head over to Connecticut, where the politics of guns are in the spotlight tonight. New Jersey Governor Christie, he is going to be stumping across this country. We've seen him in New Hampshire. We've seen him in Iowa earlier. And the potential presidential candidate is trying to help out wherever he can for Republican tickets nationwide. He, in his home state, however, issued a controversial veto on a gun control bill in the Garden State. That bill, it would have lowered the number of rounds allowed in any high-capacity ammo clip, and it would have limited to 10 bullets. That's down from the current state max of 15. Christie explained his veto this way, saying it would be trivial, his words now, and simplistic of a solution to a very complicated problem. The governor also refused a meeting with the parents of Sandy Hook victims before issuing the veto, saying he had already made up his mind, so a meeting would be, his words, hypocritical. And he also attacked the logic that those parents and other gun control advocates used, seeking the ammo clip limit.
The 10 children on the clip that they advocate for, that their lives are less valuable, if you take the logical conclusion of their argument, you go to zero. Because every life is valuable. And so why 10? Why not 6? Why not 2? Why not 1? Why not 0? Why not just ban guns completely? I understand their argument. I've heard their argument. I don't agree with their argument.
But it's how he didn't agree with the argument and how he treated those families who went to Trenton to speak with him, and they had gotten audiences with governors from across this country, that has not sat well with many people. His refusal and those remarks have many of those parents from Sandy Hook up in arms, and among them Neil Heslin, whose 6-year-old son Jesse McCord Lewis, he died in the Sandy Hook massacre. If you remember, his young son was the one who told the other kids in the classroom to get out before he tragically was shot, like so many other young lives that day. Neil, he was on RFL a few days after the Christie veto, and he said this.
I think Governor Christie at least owes us an explanation. I think he owes us an apology because the remarks were uncalled for, unjustifiable, and but I think he should at least give a reason why he didn't support that bill.
Well, tonight, that veto of Christie and his handling of it is back in the headlines. The governor, as I said, visiting Connecticut for the first time since using his veto pen, and he is in Greenwich at a high-priced fundraiser for Republicans of Connecticut. And there to greet him are protesters calling for greater gun control. Our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, he's live in Greenwich tonight. Andrew, what are those protesters saying?
Well, they are saying that they are not happy with Governor Christie or with the Republican gubernatorial candidate in Connecticut he is coming to raise money for, Tom Foley. Now, for one night anyway, Greenwich, Connecticut, and a rather tony part of Greenwich, is sort of the epicenter of the national gun debate, and we have that in microcosm here in the neighborhood. It's hard to see, but across the street we've got about a dozen or so pro-gun and gun rights protesters, whereas behind me we've got about 5 to 6 dozen gun control protesters, all of whom have come equipped with signs either aimed at Governor Christie or at Tom Foley, who is running for governor in Connecticut. And we're joined by one of those protesters now. And sir, if you can start by giving us your name.
Yes, my name is Bill Collins.
And Bill, you are a former mayor in Connecticut, correct?
Well, I was a former mayor, I guess I still am a former mayor of Norwalk. I was in office there for 8 years.
What motivated you out of office to come to a protest like this today? What is it about the issue that drove you here?
Well, Connecticut is pretty sensitive to the gun issue. I mean, we've lost a lot of people to wild-eyed guys with guns. And fortunately, our legislature has done a decent job in strengthening our laws. But here's a fellow running for governor of Connecticut who says he wants to undo some of that. And so I and a lot of other folks here would like to keep that from happening.
I'm sure you heard about Governor Christie and the recent veto of the gun control bill in New Jersey. I'm curious your thoughts about that and the fact that he's now here raising money for Tom Foley.
Well, some of us look upon Governor Christie as basically a wart on the body politic, and we're very sorry he's here. I don't think he would sell in Connecticut very well, but I'm sure he can raise money, especially in a neighborhood like this.
Why is gun control a viable? Is it just the personal experience that Connecticut has had with gun incidents and gun violence that makes it more of a sellable issue in Connecticut than it does in other places?
Well, that's sort of the icing on the cake, certainly. The legislature was meeting not long after the incident in Newtown. And so I think it gave them a little bit extra impetus to make sure things got passed. But the United States is fraught with terrible gun incidents, and people in Connecticut tend to be fairly savvy. And, they see this as a national issue and would like to tighten things up.
And there are plenty of people, especially those across the street, who say gun control and the gun control issue is really a distraction from other issues in the campaign, whether it be in the presidential campaign for Christie or in Connecticut. What would be your response to them?
Well, there are a great many issues. There are a lot of important issues. I wouldn't demean the gun issue. It's pretty important. Perhaps less here in Connecticut than some states like Colorado, where it's been even worse. But it is a serious issue, and who knows how long it'll be before the next incident.
I'm curious. We don't know if Governor Christie is going to roll in front of this protest as he heads to the event tonight. If he were to stop and get out of the car and shake a few hands and meet some people, if you had a chance to talk with him for a couple of seconds, what would you tell Governor Christie?
I would not seek out Governor Christie. I doubt that he's in a position in his political career where he wants meaningful dialogue. Perhaps I'm not either, but we like to express our viewpoints.
All right. Thank you so much for a few minutes. Really appreciate it.
Okay, my pleasure.
All right, so the gathering here continues. Governor Christie has not yet arrived. We don't know exactly when he is going to be expected, but there are certainly a lot of people here willing to greet him, and we're hoping to have a little bit more from Greenwich just a little bit later in the program. But for now, Rich, let's send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Andrew, thank you very much. Just one small part. Good and decent people can disagree as to where gun control should start and stop, and the same thing as it applies, obviously, with gun rights. But it's how Chris Christie spoke to those families from Newtown who went to Trenton, and he wouldn't give them an audience, and how dismissive he was of it. But he also used a word that it'd be hypocritical of him to change his position on this. Not so much. First of all, the governor had asked for in the past certain restrictions as it relates to caliber weapons, including .50 caliber. That was put in the legislation that he also vetoed. He had supported it, then he came out against it. And also on the subject of hypocrisy, this Chris Christie that you hear right now, a big proponent of gun rights, has not always had such a conservative stance on the issue. I want you to take a look at this ad, 1995 when it came out, when he was running for state assembly. It says Chris Christie and a guy by the name of Rick Mert support the ban on assault weapons. And now, not so much. Okay, when we come back, we will come back to our lead topic of the day. And in fact, I'll be bringing in a former member of the NYPD to talk about police procedures and policies. And with what we saw that happened in that tragic incident in Staten Island where Mr. Gardner lost his life, if the cops are completely out of line or in a fluid situation, is this just part of policing? We'll have that conversation straight ahead.